Concept of NPCs are always fun to mess around with as a writer. From a game design perspective, NPCs help guide the player along through material collection, tutorials, or questionable side quests. But from a writer's perspective, NPCs have their own stories, often giving more information about the world the character travels through. So what happens when an NPC becomes self-aware and the only story they know gets forcibly taken away? This is the story of redesigning one of the saddest NPCs from my old story, Talismanic. Hey, I'm Gigi, an artist and VTuber who writes OC stories and shares them through my art and other creative endeavors. Now, let's get into it. Before I get to designing, I should mention that this character is the second part of my series. If you are interested in learning about the backstories of Varian, the story of Talismanic's protagonist, and Sebastian, the game Talismanic's protagonist, check out this playlist where all of my designs and story concepts for Talismanic will be for easy viewing. We still need some basic context for you to understand the sad story behind this NPC. The game Talismanic is a pixel RPG where you play as Sebastian, the Kingdom of 𝑻𝒊𝒏𝒆 knightly hero after he defeated a fire mage existing long before the game's story begins. At the time of the game's beginning, the Kingdom of 𝑻𝒊𝒏𝒆's protection now rests in the hands of 5 talisman that form a barrier around the kingdom. The conflict begins when Sebastian learns that his best friend Varian has gone missing along with one of the 5 talisman. Over the course of the game, the player is to build Sebastian to be able to defeat Varian. However, the true story of Talismanic begins when Varian glitches out of his code after the game ends. That was as far as the story had been rewritten at the time of my last video. However, after some more writing, the story continues. After becoming self-aware, Varian follows through the game once more. However, this time, he obtains all of the talisman. And in response, he ends up glitching the game enough to cause a rift that sends him into the real world, his character code now missing from the game. Now, more information has been added. However, we need to meet our new character. Meet Sage. Sage is the NPC baker that the player or Sebastian interacts with to get baked goods. For game concept similarities, you can equivalent her to farmer villagers in Minecraft. Before getting to her original bio, her rewritten purpose from a game perspective is not to heal the player, but to provide food that can heal the character over time, and even provide buffs depending on the level of food. These food levels are determined as you complete more of her quests and get to know her better. Now let's get to that bio. Sage provides food to the traveler, is a single mother, and has a son. At this point, these sad character bios shouldn't come as a surprise. All of the characters for this story are generically written, so please bear with me. Regardless, we at least have a good starting point to add on to her character. So let's make our list of what we're keeping and what we need to add. I will be keeping the fact that she's a baker, she still has a son, and she does become self-aware. Now, for what we plan to change, these NPCs are going to become more like main characters once they leave the game, because now they're important. So we need 2 different designs, one that is more playable and one that is more of an NPC. Additionally, I have to design her son for flashback purposes, of course. There will be a new aspect for all of these characters, but before we get into that, we are first going to start designing. So let me show you what my mood board looks like. Sage's character has always had that pastel and comfortable feel, and a lot of these references consist of that. I included some references of Lolita styles, wigs with coils and curls, and just different types of silhouettes that I can try out for her outfits. Her colors do end up varying from this mood board, but at least we get a good base idea. So let's get into sketching. I mentioned in my last video that each character is going on a journey of self-improvement and learning more about themselves, and the talisman will be assisting them. But I'll explain that later when we get to the new expansion part of the story. For her NPC design, I focused more on a simple character silhouette that isn't necessarily memorable, but I still kept fantasy ties in the types of clothing that I gave her. I kept her colors a lot more dull compared to the more playable characters like Sebastian, and I even took some time to design her son, who shows up a lot in her personal story. But for her real-life design, I went more RPG style. Speaking of RPG, it's time to explain the new expansion of the story of Talismanic, fighting mechanics. After all of the characters make it to the real world, items from the game begin appearing all around the city. Eventually, the entire group learns that the talisman have been brought into the real world as well. And over time, they learn that each talisman has a corresponding character. As mentioned earlier, the talisman will be assisting these characters in learning more about themselves, but they also are going to be providing these characters with fighting abilities, weapons, powers, etc. to defeat the enemies that emerge from the game and begin taking over the city. Now that these characters are going to be playable in this real-world simulation of a game, they're going to be fighting. For clarification, Varian and Sebastian do have their own respective weapons and abilities. However, I am still finalizing the designs and thought process of how they work. Therefore, I will have to make a separate video on that. So let me explain Sage's RPG design. Each talisman represents a stat: HP, defense, attack, intelligence, and speed. While you probably expect Sage to be the healer, she is actually defense. Sage is a single mother, and what she learns through the talisman can be a form of recognizing her self-worth. Sage works more as a tank character. She is connected to the Talisman of Defense with a sense of protecting her internal strength and perseverance and those she considers close to her. Now, we need to talk weapons. For Sage, I got pretty creative. Now, I'm a big fan of the out-of-the-box fighting styles. So out of all of the baker utensils, what can I use? Of course, there are the regular options such as forks or spoons, but I wanted to go even further. And you know what I haven't seen? A pie cutter. I'm not sure if this is actually the name for this thing because there's so many different ways to call it by, but the moment I saw it, I just knew. If you're wondering how this works, I would equivalent it to a claymore weapon. When designing this, I wanted it to match her fantasy, homey, and cutesy aesthetic. So I tried to get a little more decorative. For colors, I decided on a rose gold since I felt it would contrast well with the cool colors in her design and kind of pop with her bright hair color. Now that we've designed her weapon, it's time to create her character art. Since Sebastian and Varian's character art is not very dynamic, I maintain that theme. However, in the future, I am definitely not opposed to trying character splash art once all of the characters and their weapons have been written and designed. It's time for the official story of our baker, Sage, in the game and story of Talismanic. Sage comes from the middle-class village where she grew up in a bakery which is now hers along with her sons. Having her husband pass away in the war with the fire mage, she has a soft spot for a lot of the knights and willingly provides food for them in their travels. As a mother, she is very protective of her son Leo, who is a free-spirited little boy around the age of 8. As the news of a missing talisman reaches the town, Sage resorts to keeping Leo in a lot more, being very protective of his well-being. However, young Leo is a huge fan of the knights and hopes to become one when he's older. Over time, you get to learn more about these two and their conflict that is growing mainly due to the fact of her fear of losing who's important to her. Through her quests, story-wise, you are mainly learning more about what is happening within the palace, as many soldiers are her customers and they talk a lot. This allows you to gain more information on who to talk to next to learn more about Varian's plans and where he may be found. Beside her connection to palace information, you also learn about her character personally. In her final quest, you help relieve her worries of her son's safety, offering to help the boy train so that he can become the truly strongest of the knights. While this seems like a very quickly answered problem, it actually goes a lot deeper than you may expect. And that is what ties her to the true story of Talismanic. After Varian ends up in the real world, the game continues as usual. However, there's now a missing entity. As mentioned before, she does interact a lot with the different knights who come into her bakery. And because of that, she normally ends up talking about Varian. Varian has become a very famous name amongst the town, as everybody wants to know about who this new bad guy is. Because she no longer has a person to talk about, she quickly glitches out of her code and is instantly confused. When glitching out of the code, most of these characters get to see what a gamer can see, Therefore, this is an NPC, now suddenly gaining the ability to see UI and not having dialogue options or even interactions with her own son. It doesn't take long before the game crashes due to Varian not being around, and therefore there being no way for the player to actually win the game since there's nobody to fight. Sage is taken from the game during this crash, forcing her to leave her son behind. In the real world, Sage learns to become her own complete person and respect herself as a strong woman who doesn't fear, but instead withstands for the protection of those she cares about. In her original story, Sage was always known as the worried mother character, but has never had the option or the ability to become more than that until now. Before we get to the reveal, thank you guys so much for watching. Also, hey, Editing GG here. This is normally the part where I say thank you guys so much for almost reaching 800 subscribers, because at the time I had recorded this originally, we were under 800, but now that we are actually over 800 subscribers and I'm still not done with the video yet, I decided to just re-record this part. Thank you guys so much for reaching and surpassing 800 subscribers. You're the best. Anyways, back to what I was saying. This is truly insane, and I can't thank you all enough. Let me know in the comments what your favorite part of Sage's design and story is. And if you like this video, remember to like and subscribe for more to help support the channel so I can make more characters and stories. Now, it's time for the final reveal. Thank you guys for following along with the continued story of Talismanic. I hope to do more of these characters as well as the game mechanics of Talismanic itself. If you would like to see more of these characters, check out my Instagram and Twitter, where I share fun sketches of them interacting with each other that may not always make it onto YouTube. Additionally, check out my Twitch, where I draw these characters live. At the moment, I am adjusting my schedule to fit in with course loads, so keep an eye on the community tab for updates. Again, remember to like and subscribe for more, and without further ado, have a great morning, evening, afternoon, whatever time it is for you, and I will see you guys in the next one.